Okay, well, let's welcome Katherine Ambrose here to the summit. Thanks, Katherine.
Thank you, Mario. I'm happy to be participating in this.
Yeah, it's awesome. I'm so happy you're here. You and I have known each other for a couple years now,
hmm
and you're somebody I could call a friend in
Well,
real estate.
thanks.
You
Thank
know,
you. I am interested in people that are doing interesting things in the real estate industry. So you've caught my attention with your book and your podcast and all the different things that you're doing. And I just think it's fascinating what you're doing and how you're helping people.
well, great. Well, great. Well, thank you. So, and you're in Wichita, so
Right?
in
hmm
Kansas, so that's good.
hmm
So that's great. So the way we talked about it, you're gonna give three tips. I might ask questions here or there to
Great. Okay.
clarify, and so I'll let you roll with it.
Okay. Well, sometimes I think that the advice that I give might just be very simplistic. I talk about this with listing clients, with sellers. And but I think that there is genius in the simplicity and that the basics are very important. So the first tip that I would have to be successful in real estate would be to become a listing agent. I know that there are people that really prefer to work with buyers, that there can be arguments about being a buyer agent, but the truth is if you want to be successful in the real estate business, I mean really successful, it's going to be through your ability to gain listing inventory and do a great job working for homeowners and helping them get their homes sold for top dollar, and just doing a great job servicing listings. That's the name of the game. And so that would be my first tip, and there's probably a lot we could discuss around that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing, and I've heard this many times before, and I think it's great advice. So let's say if you're relatively new, or let's
Mhm.
say business is slowed down, what can you do to kind of kickstart and generate new listings? What's some advice there?
Well, the beauty of it is there's so many different ways to go out there and get business. And there's no shortage of the resources out there for you to learn how to go after certain types. So I think individually, what you want to do is figure out what are you comfortable with. I know people that work at home in their pajamas most of the time, and they are blogging and working the internet. They really know how to work SEO, how to get people to register. They bring in leads that way. Um, and just an example, one of my friends, she got a cold lead through her internet work, and it was assigned to someone on her team, and it was under contract within 72 hours. So that's one way of doing it. That's probably not the way that most people are going to be successful, but I'm very intrigued by that. Um, there is going after your sphere of influence. There's a lot of good information that you can plug into about how to go after that kind of stream. My husband and I, we work together as a husband-wife team, in fact, a family team. Our son Brian works with us also. We started our business out a long time ago just doing open houses and farming a geographic area. I think that can still work for people today. I think there's a talent to being able to convert from open houses, and I think that people either maybe have it or they don't, or it's something that they can develop. But if that's not your preference, then go try something else. I think geographic farming can be great. Um, Cold calling. Something you have to remember about gurus that have products to sell, classes to sell, seminars to sell. And I'm not speaking about you, Mario, because I think you're very open-minded. You talk to a wide range of people. And I thought that your book, The Honest Real Estate Agent, just had brilliant insight that I have not seen before. It was completely unexpected. I thought you had a lot of good points there. Um, but gurus often, they might be selling one way of doing business. Somebody might be selling SEO, working the internet. Somebody else might be selling referrals only. And and I'll see some of these people, example with referrals, anytime, say in our Facebook groups or out there in public, if they hear someone talking about cold calling, they're immediately like, oh, that doesn't work. Don't do that. That's going out of favor. It's not a good thing to do. And I just think you have to think about who the messenger is, because there are people that are very successful with cold calling or cold leads. And you have to remember that cold leads are human beings that need help. And that if you come from it from the perspective of, I want to see who I can help today rather than I want to see who I can make money from today and who I can, what business I can get today. Look at it from the perspective of, I'm going to put myself out there and see who I can find that needs my help. And people that are cold leads are warm-blooded human beings that can be dear people, and you could make a world of difference to them by reaching out.
And I know, and I think that's a great point. And I think that's one of the things that you do, right? You're not adverse to going out knocking on doors
Mm-hmm.
and to calling expireds and for sale by owners
Mm-hmm.
because you have the right mindset where you're trying to help them.
Right. It's just a little flip. So if you find yourself being nervous about approaching people, then you're thinking about it from inside your head instead of thinking it from their perspective. So just make that little switch.
So are you still doing that? Are you still cold calling and knocking on
I
doors?
I do from time to time. I really don't knock doors very often, but I will cold call expired listings. That's my favorite because those are people I know I can help. Um,
So
so
can you give an example of how a call goes and what's your approach on an expired? I know you have scripts, but I think a lot of it is because of who you are and what you do.
it is. I think that you can be scripted. I think you can learn great scripts and go with that. I have more of a free form just based on my experience. And a couple months ago, I was going to show off for my son and say, all right, you want to make cold calls? Okay, I'm going to show you how to do it. So I made one call, was lucky enough to reach the person, had a great conversation, set the appointment. We got it listed. It's under contract. And then the next day I made call after call with no luck. So you just don't know sometimes. Um, it's an interesting thing. I think if I did it every day, it could be a very consistent source of business. And of course, I love it when I do reach people and do get the listing appointment, and I always get the listing and I always get it sold. Um, so I really like that. That's my favorite thing to do, but that's because I have a lot of experience with listings. I have a lot of experience in this market. And just personally, that kind of trips my trigger, helping people that have kind of suffered from not being priced right or whatever was going on. So that's a big area of expertise for me and something I enjoy. And that's what I'm saying is that everyone has to decide for themselves what you can get excited about. I've known people that became masters at for sale by owners. That's not me. It could be me if I worked at it. I know I could do it. I'm just not sure I want to do that. I think that if someone can become a master of befriending for sale by owners and gaining their trust and listing them and helping them accomplish what they want to accomplish, wow, I'm impressed. And so I think you just have to decide for yourself what it is you want to go for.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. And I think the other thing that you said that was helpful is, farming a geographic
Hmm.
territory
Hmm.
and becoming an expert in that area. Is that something that you've seen good success in getting listings?
Absolutely. Now, when Randy and I, my husband and I, were very, very focused. See, they always tell you what you focus on expands. When we were very, very focused on a very limited size geographic area, we were so intense on it that we drove through all the time. If we were coming home from the movie theater, we drove through a different part of the neighborhood to get home. We were watching and focused on that neighborhood so much so that I think we ended up with a 53% market share at one time, which is absolutely mind-blowing, incredible. People that know statistics and know this business would tell you that that is just amazing. Well, as we became more successful, we had maybe less focus on that geographic area, especially over time, and we started really branching out throughout the city. And so our 53% went down and down and down. But, I think that that's also kind of the beauty of trying different things in this business is that no matter what it is that you try, no matter how your focus might shift, you learn something from the experience.
Well, that's good. Okay, so tip number one, focus on becoming a listing agent.
Absolutely.
The agent who lists is going to last.
Hmm.
And like you said, it's not rocket science. Figure out a way that works for you
Hmm.
based on your skill set.
Right. Hmm. And it's one thing to get the listing. It's another thing to get the house sold. And so my second tip would be always be preparing from the very beginning for any scenario. So when you take the listing, you do an estimated net to seller, I hope. We always do one with at least three prospective price points. So a lot of times it might be $5,000 increments, maybe it could be $10,000 increments, but we'll have a sheet with three columns. So we're preparing them from the very beginning that, this is what we all agree that this is a smart asking price and this is what we're going to go for. But we're going to be watching within a week, 2 weeks, and probably not much more than that, thinking about whether that's the right position to be at or not, and be preparing them from the very beginning to move over to these other columns if necessary, because I do think that it's very counterintuitive that sometimes being priced lower nets you more money in the end, and it will net you a faster sale. So it's very important to be positioned correctly in the market and be prepared to not be the genius that you think you are, and that the seller thinks he or she might be. That once you get the property on the market, throw out that market analysis and start listening to the market and see who shows up and what else they're looking at, and really pay attention to feedback, which I get feedback myself. I know that there's a lot of talk out there about being highly leveraged. I've been highly leveraged in the past, but I can tell you that I feel like I do a better job for my clients when I personally follow up on the feedback. I never rely on the automated feedback that comes through the email system. I will always call and thank an agent for that feedback, and then I will proceed to ask them more questions. And there are a few agents out there that I don't expect to get a hold of and that I don't expect will return my call unless they have some interest in that property. I know that. But there are other agents I will get a hold of, and just by asking a few more questions than what someone else might ask, I feel like I get a lot of good information that really gives my clients a tremendous benefit, and and I'm able to ask for the offer. And that's always very important to me. I'm not afraid of low ball offers, and I don't think anyone should be. That's still an offer, and most of the time you can put those together. So that's probably a whole other conversation, but being very proactive with your listings and managing the feedback yourself, I think is really important to get more offers in.
So let's say you have a listing and the market is not that hot. And so when do you start thinking about doing a price reduction? Is it 2 weeks in, 30 days in? Do you have a rule of thumb? How do you kind
Yes,
of,
two weeks. And I might start getting nervous after a week. 2 weeks, I know we're not at the right price. And I've prepared my client for that. And sometimes, even though I've prepared them for that, maybe they're not ready to make that move, but they're definitely hearing that from me. So it's an ongoing conversation. A listing is an ongoing conversation. You can't just list it and then hope that it sells, and not stay in touch with your seller. The number one complaint that sellers have about real estate agents is they don't hear from the agent. A lot of times that's because there's nothing happening. Well, that is the time that you really need to be communicating with the seller and educating them and explaining what needs to happen, so that they can make a good decision. If you're not providing them information, they are probably not going to know what to do. I've talked to a lot of sellers that became my client after someone else had them expire, that the seller thought that the house was overpriced to begin with, or they ultimately came to that conclusion that the house was overpriced, and they would have changed the price if the agent had talked to them about it. And I've talked to a lot of people where the agent talked them into keeping the price where it was. Um, so agents are shooting themselves in the foot, and they're really doing damage to the homeowners when they're not learning about pricing, and that 2 weeks is long enough to test a price in most markets. In my market, if it's a house out in the country, it's something different. or if there's a blizzard going on. But other than that, 2 weeks is long enough to test a price.
So what's your philosophy on setting a price? I was just kind of curious because
hmm
you were talking there. So for example, if you think the house should be priced at like 275, do you tell your seller that that's what it should be, or do you give them the information that they need and let them make the decision?
That's a great question. Thank you. What we do is we do not take a pre-printed market analysis that where the computer has magically spat out what number the house should be priced at. What we do is we take all the information that we think is important. We print out the full detail sheets on MLS. And you can do this how you want, but I'm a big believer in giving your client a lot of information so they can make a decision. And sometimes they want to get really in depth, and sometimes they just want to know that you have all that there and you're demonstrating to them that you know what you're talking about, and then they're going to have a lot of faith in you. And others, they don't want really your opinion. They want you to provide the data and they'll make the decision. So a lot of that has to do with, people's preferred behavior styles and just how they think about things. So that's something else to learn about is like the DISC behavior profiles and anything else that might help you in understanding better how to communicate with different people. But we take all the information that might be important. We go into as much depth with each person as they want to, and then we sit at the table together and figure out what we all think might be a good asking price. So it's a discussion. Um, and and then we go from there. So sometimes they might think it should be higher than what we do. Maybe we'll try their price. Maybe they'll try our price. It just depends. It's conversation. But ultimately, it's up to the client, I think. We want to respect them and within reason and give it a try. I'm all for testing a price, but I only want to test it for a couple of weeks because that tells us everything we need to know.
Yeah, I believe in how you're doing it because I do the same thing. I mean, I'm not a team or anything,
Mhm.
but I always give my seller all the information that they need, and then they can make the decision. And like you said, we can revisit it pretty
Mhm.
quickly. But the thing that gets me, and I'm sure you've seen this, what other realtors do, they do two strategies to get a listing.
Mhm.
One of them is if the market's a little bit hot, and let's say the price should be 275, they'll go in and say, okay, well, we can list it at 3.25. And then
Uh-huh.
that's what the seller wants to hear, and then they
Uh-huh.
can get the listing. And
Mhm.
I kind of hate when that happens.
Mhm. So if we've had the opportunity to sit down with that seller and talk to them about it, I still think that most of the time we're going to get that listing, we're going to get it priced right. Um, because we all know that's called buying a listing. I think if you're really providing enough information in black and white, your seller knows. Um, I think if they think that a $275,000 house might go for 325, they don't have enough information. So if you have the opportunity to sit down at the kitchen table with them and go over everything, let them self-discover that. And then if you're competing with someone that's telling them 325, they're going to know that agent doesn't know what they're talking about, and you
Right.
can save them a lot of grief. So the challenge is when we don't get the opportunity to sit at the table until next time around. They were listed with somebody for 325 for 186 days and nothing happened. Then we come in and show them, oh, we had no idea. Now we understand, and then they'll price it right. So my idea of testing a price is if, two or three, four people are sitting at a table and think, it's probably maybe going to sell for about 275, we think. Um, you might talk about pricing it at 274.9 to in an effort to make sure that it sells quickly. You might have a reason for doing that, or 279.9, thinking that maybe the same buyers are going to come through the house if you were priced at 279.9. So then it becomes a little bit of a discussion from there.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I think that's awesome because I know I've gotten complaints from other customers that I've worked with, and they tell me horror stories in the past where they work with the realtor, they had the listing signed, and then the realtor, like this 275 example, the realtor says, well, we'll list it at 260. and then that realtor is taking the path of least resistance, and they just take the first offer at 260 just to get the deal done. And naturally,
Mhm.
the seller is going to be upset.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, yeah, our goal is to bring the highest price in that we possibly can. So, I would hope that most realtors, I'd like to think that realtors have a lot of integrity and they want to bring in the highest price that they possibly can for someone without jeopardizing the time scenario and the other things that might be involved. I think that most realtors want to do the best job that they can for people. That I think sometimes they go the opposite direction and they're trying to get more money than what the house is really worth, and that's costing the seller big time in the end because the seller will end up with less money and a lot more time on the market.
right, right.
So,
Well, this is all good. And I think the big thing that you're talking about is communicating, having a conversation.
hmm
I know I had a listing last year and it wasn't selling, and I knew why it wasn't selling. And, finally I had, doing the communication, I had to tell the seller, give him a big email, these are the reasons why it's not selling.
hmm
And so what they had to do, they had to take it off the market, do some basic updating. And
hmm
once we did that, within a month, once we put it back on the market, it sold. But I had to have that conversation and be direct with them.
And I think that a lot of agents are fearful of being that direct. I think that it's probably best to have those kind of fierce conversations in person and by phone. But I can tell you that we've experienced that really working for us too, where you spell out everything you're thinking in an email. Again, I don't know that that's the best way to do it, but I think that when we've done that, it's come after a lot of verbal communication and they're still not getting it. You spell out everything you want. And I can tell you there have been a lot of emails that I've written where I thought, oh boy, this is going to get me fired for sure. And every time I think that, it works. I just think, I can't believe I'm pushing it like this. I mean, I'm really telling him what needs to happen and it works. So,
Yeah. And it does work. And it does work in email nowadays because
mhm,
so many people communicate via email. I deal with a lot of high tech people and,
mhm.
2 o'clock in the morning, they're reading email.
hmm And then, you might have a lot of attachments that you're sending along as supporting documentation. Uh, full detail MLS sheets. I've been known to print a lot of those out, mark them all up with appraiser notes and personal notes that I've added, scan it back in and include that as an attachment. So if they are a techie person or a real data person, it's really hard to argue with this argument that we've spelled out in all the supporting documentation. Plus, if you're working with a married couple, the two of them, they each get the opportunity to read what you've written and see your supporting documentation, and then they can kind of work on each other. And, so again, that fierce conversation is very important. So,
Okay.
and your goal is to help people. You're intending to help people and get the point across. They've got to hear that message. That's why we're so successful getting homes sold that have been listed once, twice, three times, even six times with other real estate agents before they've listed with us, and we get them sold. And the reason why is that we are not afraid to tell these people what they need to know and educate them and give them the information that they need so they can make a good decision.
That's great. Okay. So let's go to your tip number 3.
Tip number 3 would be to know the market. Know the other real estate agents in the market to the best of your ability, and it's going to depend on your market and how large your market is. Um, so if I'm talking to my son or another agent about an experience that they're having, the first thing I'm going to ask them is, who's your co-op agent? And if they give me the name of a franchise or a real estate company, I'm going to go, nope. I want to know the name of the agent because that should tell me something. If I haven't heard of that agent, I'm going to think that they're a newer agent or, something is going on there that I'm going to be curious about, or I'll know instantly who they are and like, oh, I know her. And it becomes a completely different conversation. Or, there's been experiences before where like, oh, okay, well, let me tell you, this is how, okay. So it's very important. Just like for real estate agents, it doesn't matter what real estate company you're with. It matters who you are and how you do your business. So when it comes to who your co-op agents are, who your showing agents are, the listing agents on the homes that you're showing, knowing who those agents are is part of the kind of intelligence you should be gathering about the market. We tell clients every day on listing appointments that we've been working in this market for so long and we've got relationships with so many agents that it's a tremendous advantage. People want to know why they should list with a real estate agent or list with you over someone else or be a for sale by owner. Well, it's not just because of what I can do for them today, what advertising I'm paying for, my professional photographer and the different things I have, but it's also about maybe 17 years worth of relationship building out there and rapport building out there, tremendously important. So developing a good reputation to the best of your ability with each individual agent, because your reputation is individual with each individual out there. You have kind of an overall, but then you have experiences with different ones, and you want to make sure those are good. Our goal as Ambrose Team is that realtors see our name and think, oh, I would really like to work with them again. So we want to be a friendly co-op. That's really our number one goal, is to be a friendly co-op with the other real estate agents out there, because then we can do a better job servicing our clients.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like you're talking, and then it's kind of like your tip of knowing your market, knowing the other agents. But really, in essence, it's like what you were saying at the end there is make sure you protect the integrity of your reputation.
Mm-hmm.
You do what you say you're going to do. So that way, if somebody wants to work with the Ambrose team, like, oh man, if I'm going to work with Katherine, I know we're going to get this deal done.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what your client wants to hear too, your
Right.
buyer or your seller,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that we have confidence in that other agent, especially if you're a listing agent. Because if you get some flaky realtor, somebody you don't know, or some company or whatever, and we don't want to say that this happens, but it's subjective and it does happen.
Absolutely. And at the house that I listed that, I was kind of showing off to my son on how to make a cold call, and it just worked. That house is under contract, and the other agent, she was so excited to work with us, which is so flattering and so sweet. Um, And she was so embarrassed the entire time because she felt like she was bringing a really low offer, and they looked at the home so many times before they put something in writing, and then every little step they looked at the home again and again and again, and it was a very challenging negotiation. But each time I'm like, I don't care. I'm happy to work on this. We're going to put this together. And, that makes you feel good about working with a real estate agent when you know you can take them anything and they are going to work, 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 and probably be able to put it together and make everybody happy in the long run. Whereas there are other realtors out there, that if you take them an offer that uh, they could really get their nose out of joint about it and be horrible. That's why I said earlier in the conversation is that I love lowball offers. Bring me anything, because reality is that there are very, very few true lowball offers to where the buyer's just going to disappear. And if they do, fine. That's very rare. I'd say it happens once or twice a year with us. Most of the time, these lower offers, we are able to come to a point where we understand where the buyer's coming from, we know what our seller's goal is, and we can ultimately work at it, no matter how much work it takes, and get it put together. So.
Okay, well, this is great. See, you have a lot of energy, before you know it, we're talking 30 minutes and
Mhm. Well, good. I'm glad. I'm glad we were able to come up with some things. Again,
uh,
a lot of this is kind of simplistic, but it's the truth. It's the basics. So, and
yeah,
it's important.
absolutely. So I have a bonus question. So
Okay.
I didn't mention this to you earlier, so this is pretty easy.
Okay.
So here it is, we're doing the summit. It's the middle of January 2016. I
Mhm.
want you to look back last year
Mhm.
and share an accomplishment, a goal, something that you achieved, either personal or business, that you're really excited about and you're really proud of.
Well, that's a great question. Boy, so many things are floating through my head, and like none of them seem to be big enough to tell you. But we moved our office home. We still have office space at the office, but we really don't hardly go there. Working out of our home, I never thought I would do that, and I love it. I was an owner operator of 2 franchises, and I really wanted agents to be in the office because I wanted to feel their energy, and I thought they'd be more plugged in that way. But I can tell you, just as an agent, just wanting to focus on our own family business. I love working at home. I don't know why we didn't do this a long time ago. Absolutely love it. And years ago when Randy and I were just so focused on growing our real estate business, we really didn't have anything to talk about with people other than real estate and our kids. We knew nothing about what was going on in the world. And today we go to the YMCA almost every single day. I teach 2 spin classes. I'm getting ready to get certified to teach yoga. And so I think I'm kind of proud of that we have a lot more balance in our life, that it's more comfortable, not just striving all the time, but having a confidence and a security in where we're at today.
Yeah, and it's good. And plus you needed a change of pace, so
Mm-hmm.
working from home is a good change for you.
Mm-hmm.
So,
So,
okay. Well, thanks, Catherine, for being here. I appreciate you being, part of the summit. Like I said, I love your energy. I love your enthusiasm. So thank you so much.
well, thank you, Mario, and I really wish everybody that's participating in the summit to have a great 2016, and I hope you get some tremendous tidbits that really help take your career to the next level.